I said, on this issue of how police work with immigrants, please talk to the police chiefs of this country. God forbid they've been a victim of crime or they're a witness to a crime. Immigrant New Yorkers, documented and undocumented, feel safe going to the police and working with them, and we will never let that change.
Then New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio defending sanctuary cities. Now, there's a problem with that, and both sides of the aisle are coming together. It's time for our Common Ground segment. Joining us tonight, New York City Councilman, Republican Joe Borelli, and Democrat Kalman Yeger. Councilman, thank you very much for being here. I want to talk to you about the issue and as you see it. The headlines recently have been all over the place, but New York Post, migrants flooding New York City's justice system, making up 75% of arrests in Midtown. The elites opened the doors to migrants and chaos. And New York Times, a different take, migrant crime wave not supported by data despite high-profile cases. Councilman Yeger, how do you see this? Like, what's the ground truth about New York City and dealing with this on all levels?
Well, anybody who says that every single person who comes over the border, lawfully or unlawfully, is here to commit crimes is simply wrong. But at the same time, it's naive and false to say that nobody who comes here is committing crimes. And the reality is, when a city like New York, with the numbers at approximately, as of 2 months ago, over 205,000 migrants have come to New York City in the last 2 years. It's simply not believable to say that our crime numbers are not seeing the result of that policy.
And Councilman Borelli, you've formed this Common Sense Caucus, and you have a number of proposals here together, allowing the NYPD to communicate with ICE, enable ICE to collect suspects in custody, ballot measure to repeal restrictions on deportation, detention, and removal. Obviously, that's not in the purview of the New York City Police, but what do you see coming together on this issue you'll be able to get done?
Look, we believe we have public support. We believe that New Yorkers are frustrated. They are seeing rising crime numbers where there are high concentrations of migrants. Whether you agree with the policy or not, if you're a resident of even the most progressive neighborhoods of New York, you are noticing that there is more crime. And not just the crime aspect, but also the money aspect. This year, it's going to cost us $5 billion to house and care for this population. That would make our migrant spending the 9th most expensive city budget in the United States. We'd be about the same as the city of Dallas. In other words, New York can just pay Dallas's budget for what we're paying for this migrant crisis. And I think New Yorkers have finally said enough is enough. We're not getting any value out of this. It's not playing out as the Democrats have said, that this would somehow enhance New York City. And unfortunately, until we see a change at the top, I don't think anything's going to change at the southern border to alleviate those coming in.
You know, it's interesting, Councilman, you mentioned Dallas. The Dallas police have really been expressing themselves, how tough it is, and they've seen some violent crime in these migrant communities. Just take a listen.
The days of these simple 911 calls, loud music, a family distress, those days are gone. We are responding to acts of war. As a nation, we really need to sit down and think, what are we asking of our officers?
Councilman Yeger, how much can you get done on a city level? How much do you think Democrats are listening to what your Common Sense Cause proposals are?
Well, to put this in perspective, the number of migrants who have come into New York City exceeds the number of residents of a council district that I represent and that Joe represents. Each of our districts have about 170,000 people. So we've already taken in more than an entire New York City council district into our city in the last 2 years. It's just simply not sustainable. And when we talk about this $5 billion number, think about what New York City can do with $5 billion. We just adopted a budget 3 months ago, and the biggest fight on the table was whether or not we can keep our libraries open. That's the battle. Whether or not we can afford to keep our cops on the street, to hire more cops for retiring cops because they're leaving their job, to hire firefighters, to hire teachers. The services that are required by the migrants who are coming to New York City are immense. They're costing us an enormous amount of money. We just simply do not have the resources to keep on footing this bill.
And Councilman Yeger, do you think this will be a major issue in the national election?
I don't see how it's not. This is a national problem, and just because a city like New York, a city like Chicago, a city like Dallas are the poster childs and at the forefront of seeing the problem, this is an absolute national problem that is foisted upon cities like ours, where people believe that they can come here, they're going to get a room at the Roosevelt Hotel, they're going to get a phone, and they all seem to have motorcycles, and they seem to be doing just fine. And this is a policy we do not in the city of New York control the borders. All we can control is what's going to happen to people once they show up in our city.
Let me ask one more thing quickly, Councilman Borelli. New York Times says there's a flurry of inquiries about the mayor. Remarkable avalanche of investigations and raids struck at a heart of the mayor's circle. No ordinary distraction. It comes as all of these things are happening. Can the mayor do his job in this current environment?
It's going to be tough. In the past, these folks who've been investigated have been sort of the second tier of individuals. Now with this next round right now, this is the inner sanctum of his world. So it's going to be increasingly difficult for him to do that, but we'll see what he decides to do.
Okay. Councilman, we really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on.